This video is brought to you by Patreon provider Josh. Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Alright, enough shenanigans already. It's too early in the video. TRIJICON AccuPower 1-8 by 28. This particular model features the segmented circle in first focal plane with red illumination. One key difference between this and the 1-4 that I had reviewed is that there's no drops on your elevation. This is a simple mill reticle, and it serves a purpose that we're going to touch on soon. Being first focal plane, as we take it up to its maximum magnification of 8x, you can very clearly see that the reticle gets larger to compensate. Reticles are very subjective. I really like this one because it fits a very niche role that this scope just so happens to be perfect for, in my opinion. I'm going to be trying to prove that point throughout this entire review. Anyway, the illumination, as you can see, gets very bright, very little bleed out, and is fairly even. This is a completely different performance from what we saw from the green segmented circle on the 1-4. Once you get below about 4 or 5, it basically becomes non-visible in a lit environment, but when we shut off the lights, you can see the illumination and the reticles still maintain a very high level of sharpness. Also look at the drops. 5, 10, 15, and 20 have a little dot next to them, so it's easy for you to pick those up. Even if you can't pick up the reticle, you can at least figure out kind of where the holds are. Illumination, again, below 3 or so, basically does nothing, but overall, the illumination on this thing is sensational, in my opinion. If the green segmented circle 1-4 that I had reviewed had this level of brightness to it, I would have much preferred it. In fact, that was the only real thing about that scope that I didn't truly care for. Everything else was pretty good. And now, let's take a look at these beautiful target turrets. These turrets are fantastic. The locking is very good. The rotational indicator is very good. Feels really good. It might be a little bit muted on the clicks, but this is a used scope, so you gotta take that with a grain of salt. But these things are fantastic. Now, this does not have a side focus. The parallax on this is set to 100 yards, so this is as good as it's going to get, even though it's pretty good. I had to play around with a couple things, but we have a very good image. And so far this thing has been very good through and through. Illumination at maximum is too bright to run on this, but just cycling through it real quick, those are all of your illuminations. Reticle looks like it lines up really well. All right, let's give this a twist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 4 mils left and 4 mils up, and it looks to be pretty good. Not bad at all. Let's reset the windage. Resets perfectly fine, and let's just keep climbing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I unfortunately had to cut this video a little short because there were too many people that were showing up. Anyway, it tracks really well, in my opinion. The reticle wasn't lining up 100%, but you gotta keep in mind, this is still an 8x maximum with a fixed parallax, and it's kind of hard for me to get this 100% without having more magnification to it. It's just the nature of the beast in my setup. Nevertheless, This thing's still tracked within 1 or 2%, which in my opinion is very good. Couple this reticle with how well it tracks with those really nice turrets, and you can see this is not your regular LPVO. So far, this scope has yet to disappoint, and I'm delighted to say that the 1X on this thing is as true to 1X as I've ever gotten my hands on. It is sensational, and the amount of scope body you can see is almost perfect. Bumping it up to 4X here at our 30-yard power transformer, and you can see that we still have a very sharp and clear image. Bumping it up to 6X, and we'll see a little bit more degradation, but this is because we're at such a close distance with a little bit more magnification and no focus on your parallax. Illumination now is set at maximum, and as you can see on this bright, beautiful sunny day, it is very visible and easy to pick up. 8X magnification here, and you can see the image is not stellar, but again, there's only so much you can expect from an 8X magnified, non-focus adjustable scope at close distances. We back the magnification out just a little bit before we start panning down to look at our 400-yard steel door. Backing it back all the way to 1X here, and you can see just how sharp the image is from center to edge, all around the entire image. Illumination is still looking very, very good. It might not be as bright as I would typically like it, but the segmented circle does do its job of helping you draw your eye to the center of the reticle to make it very easy to pick up. It performs really well in this scenario. Our 400-yard steel door looks absolutely sensational. You can see some mirage in the air. All the branches on those trees are razor sharp, as well as the door, the bricks, everything there is fantastic. There's good levels of contrast. The brightness on this thing is superb. That's down to the 34mm tube and the 28mm front objective, the biggest I've ever got my hands on. Here in the trees, look at the contrast there. You can make out almost every single large tree branch there. Stretching it out to the 800-yard power towers, and again, this thing does not disappoint as far as the clarity, sharpness, and brightness go. It is absolutely fantastic. Look at how good that looks. This is only 8X. I've gotten my hands on scopes that have double the magnification that still don't look as good as this, that you still can't make out things as clearly. Granted, this is a beautiful, bright, sunny day, but it's still very impressive. You want even further proof that this thing is surprisingly incredible? Let's bump it up to 1,000 yards. Bumping it up all the way to 8X, as you can see right here, and the image again does not disappoint in any way, shape, or form. It is clear, it is bright, and you can make out a lot of detail even in the thick of the bush below the house. My review wouldn't be complete unless I dialed at least 10 mils of elevation here to see if we have any sort of optical degradation. The reason why I do this is very simple. If you're shooting out that far, you have to add some elevation to compensate for bullet drop. It's as simple as that. 10 mils added here, and is there really any sort of difference to the image? No. It looks absolutely fantastic yet again. So I decided to add 8 more mils of elevation, which bottoms out the turret. So you could expect about 18 mils or so of elevation gain total with about a 50-yard zero. Again, that is one hell of a looking image. I've had scopes with larger everything that still don't look and perform as well as this thing does. An absolute beast.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Maximum brightness.
Alright, so I'm not going to talk too much over this, but I wanted to point out one thing, and that's the 1X. I've only briefly touched on how good this thing is. But take a look at this door frame. Typically, in an environment such as this with a 1X magnified optic, that door frame would be probably out of the image when looking through the scope. Only to the naked eye or on something like a reflex or a really good red dot would you not have any sort of deformation there. But look at it. It's basically exactly where it would be if you didn't have the scope there in front of you. The performance on 1X is sublime.
Pew pew, pew pew. Pew pew, pew pew.
This thing seems to do everything just about right, with the exception of, well, one thing. Here at 50 yards, I'm going to put the illumination on full, and it doesn't really pop up that bright because I accidentally left it on for a few days. Yeah, my bad, I know. And no, I did not have a spare 2032 battery, so this is as good as it gets. However, let's talk about optical clarity continuously on this thing because it just continues to blow me away. There is very little to no shift at 1x. Look at the back berm, the targets, the concrete walls. Everything is basically in line with one another. I've talked about that a couple of times with other LPVOs. When you pan across it in this exact segment, go look see for yourself. Even on really high-end ones, you're going to have some sort of shift to that back berm. With this, it's very little to none, and it is an absolute stellar performance. We only have the magnification here on about 6x, and yet the image quality and everything is still very good, as well as the sharpness to the targets. Here at the maximum magnification of 8x, yes, the image does look soft because, again, it's a fixed parallax of 100 yards. There's only so much you can expect from larger magnification scopes at really close ranges like this. It's for that precise reason that we're going to be bumping the magnification back to 1x for the remainder of this little segment and enjoy it before we take a look at the scope's eye box. I'm really impressed by how well this thing performs across all platforms, so let's see how this eye box test works. Here at 1x, you can see it is tremendously large, open, and easy to get behind. Almost a joke at how good it is. Here at 4x, it still performs extremely, extremely well. Among some of the best 4x's that I've ever gotten my hands on. It's so good, so bright, so open. 6x starts to get a little bit tighter, which is, again, something that you're going to expect across any sort of LPVO or any other sort of higher magnified optic. If you have a 5 to 25, 5x is going to be at least as tight as this thing is here at 6x. At 8x, however, it's going to get tight, and it does. It's still, however, extremely usable as long as you maintain a proper cheek weld and you have good muscle memory to get back on the gun every single time in the exact same position. Granted, if you're shooting from a really awkward position, your best bet's probably to bump down the magnification and just be a little more patient. Anywho, enjoy some ASMR ambiance. Snapping back to reality, we're at my local range once again, this time focusing our attention on 100-yard paper targets. They seem a little washed out, but that's because it was a very overcast day, and the lighting on overcast days is not ideal for when you're trying to shoot video. You can see that the hotspot in the illumination is on the bottom right, like we saw at the very beginning of this video. Those steel plates are roughly 200 yards away, and they all look absolutely fantastic. I pan across till I find one that is going to be an easy target for me with my 22LR, and we try to see if we can spot some splash or some hits at 200 yards with the 22. A topic for some debate would probably be the reticle option for this scope, but I feel that this thing, with the turrets that it has, the tracking that it's capable of, and the overall construction of it, especially the clarity from 1 to 8x, this thing is set up more like a DMR style scope. Something that you're not overly concerned about weight, which we'll talk about more in my final thoughts, but I really think that this is going to be better on like a 308 battle rifle that you're going to be having at a 50 or 100 yard zero, and you're going to be dialing up for more precise shots at distance. If you're going for more precise shots though, do you want a more precise center crosshair? Well, it's sort of a give and take. This thing is a, for lack of a better term, a dual sort of scope. Something that you can clearly use at basically 0 yards like you've seen, all the way up to about 800 or so. Unfortunately, at greater distances, that center crosshair is going to start to get thick, and it's going to start to take up smaller targets. A perfect example are those two steel plates to the far right. They measure about 12 by 14 inches or so. If the crosshair was completely over it, you probably wouldn't even see it. So that's the only thing that I can see with this being a little bit less than stellar. But it's big enough that you could still use it at 1x, especially with the illumination. I take a shot at the plate to the right, and you can easily see the splash at the 9 o'clock position. The reticle on this thing is, a topic for debate, but nothing can be debated about the clarity of the glass, its sharpness, its brightness, and its overall just fantastic look and feel. Another thing, there we go again, feel. The scope feels absolutely superb. If you didn't watch my first view on this thing, go take a look at it, because this thing feels, well, as good as you'd ever expect or want from a scope from any price point. Ah, we finally did it. The final segment before my final thoughts. I'm going to let this be mostly ambiance, so I'm going to get a couple things off my chest right now. I'm going to go over it and probably repeat myself several times in the final thoughts, but just know this scope is fantastic. It fits a very niche role, and as a result, this is not going to be for everybody. What do I mean by that? Well, first off, it is heavy. It's got 34mm tubes, so it's a lot larger than a lot of other LPVOs, but it's also set up to be dialed for elevation and windage, as opposed to what I personally like, which is a really usable BDC set up properly on the right scope with the right ammunition. However, with enough training and skill set, you can use this in that style as long as you know what your drops are for your round at certain distances.
Pew! Pew!
I'm a huge advocate on training for your systems and mastering them, and as a result, you can get past that with this reticle setup on this scope.
You're one ugly mother.
But if you're looking for a one-and-done sort of scope that's going to fit 99% of your needs from up close to practical engagements of 600-700 yards,
Pew! Pew pew! Pew pew!
I really think this is the home run. I don't think there's anything else in the market that gives you the flexibility of making all of your shots count more than this as far as an LPVO.
Pew pew! Pew pew! Pew pew! Pew pew! Moved it up one pick slot. Pew pew! Pew pew!
Because of the generous eye box at 1x, you can shift it a full pick rail farther forward and not have to worry about not being able to see through it. Another benefit of doing this is how little of the scope body you can see. However, if you add magnification, it's not going to be right.
Pew pew! Pew pew! So I'm going to start this video off by saying a huge thank you to my Patreon provider, Josh, for sending this into review. I never really cared all that much for the 1 to 4. I thought it was pretty good, but those things come in around $700-800, and pretty good isn't good enough for that price point. I don't care what it's trying to throw at you, what it's trying to sell you. It's a lot of money. This thing comes in right around $1,300 to $1,400 in the new used-ish market. I have seen these go for around $1,000, however, and if you can get an example like this for around $1,000, I'm going to say it right now, I think it's a home run. But it's not a home run for everybody. I feel there's a very specific role that this scope plays. We're going to talk about that right now. You see, typically an LPVO, in my opinion, is used for a small, lightweight, handy carbine. Something that you're going to be using up to about 400, 500, maybe 600 yards at maximum. Probably with a 223, 7.62x39, something similar to that avail. This, however, because of its size, its weight, and its characteristics, I feel this would be much more suited on like a 308 battle rifle, DMR's rifle perhaps. Something where you're not overly worried about weight, or maybe you're looking for a little bit more weight to help mitigate recoil. Maybe you're only looking to shoot inside of 1,000 yards on slightly larger targets. A 1 to 8 should be able to get you there no problems. And this thing performs absolutely fantastically for the price. You've seen it and I've talked about it already in the video. But the 1X on this thing, it is big, it is forgiving, it is accurate to 1, there is very little deformation to none. It is phenomenal. The reticle, the segmented circle in this aspect, being first focal plane, works. It's just the right size at 1X, and ramping up through the magnification range, it stays a fairly good size. The only criticism I might really have is at 8X, the center crosshair does get pretty thick. The turrets work wonderfully. The illumination red, I think, is the key that makes this so much better than the 1 to 4 that I had reviewed. Works great in daytime, awesome at night. It's very easy to get behind and use. The only real downside to this is the weight. So this thing is a chunky boy. 25.4 ounces is a lot of weight. Now for someone like myself, where the particular role that I have for this rifle was to be super lightweight, I went with a slightly different option. A 2.5 to 10 PST Gen 1, which you will be seeing a review on soon, comes in more than 5 ounces lighter. You can do something like this if you're okay with having slight magnification at your lowest. For me, having a 2.5 works really well at about 50 yards and out. So something like this, for me, and my particular rifle, in this case a Steyr Scout in 308, was the perfect combination to keep that gun super lightweight and handy. But all told, this thing is so versatile because the 1X on it is so good, and the 8X is so usable, and the turrets track so well that you can use this for long-range shooting. Undoubtedly, as long as you're okay with 8X magnification. Now, all that being said, yes, this is an old modeling. It's been replaced by the Credo. Is it any better? Well, I really hope to get my hands on one of those soon because I am completely blown away by this thing. Wholeheartedly recommend it. If you're looking for something like this and you find it for around $1,000, it's a home run. It's literally at that point half the price of the Gen 3 Razor, a little bit heavier, but it comes with basically all the features that the Razor comes with. Granted, 2x less on magnification. So with that, Josh, thank you very much for sending this in for review. I almost don't want to send this back to you, but I have no real role for this. If I was building a DMR rifle, you would not be getting this back. You'd be getting money from me for my PayPal, just so I can say I have one of the best 1 to 8s I've ever gotten my hands on. Anyway, that's all for right now. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.
And a very huge thank you to all of my Patreon providers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. But you can still help support by using my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.